Kicking off the BBC Proms on 4 now on BBC4. Tomorrow night, the Orchestre National de Lyon celebrates the musical links between East and West. But now, with a celebration of the work of Elgar, it's the BBC Philharmonic.
Hello and a very warm welcome to the Royal Albert Hall for the first of this year's Proms on BBC4. We're going to be here throughout the season on Thursday and Friday nights with a fantastic array of music, from Handelian opera to the legendary Lang Lang, lots of Stravinsky ballet and British music, both old and new. And as ever on BBC4, we'd love your comments and your questions. Please send us an email at proms@bbc.co.uk, or of course you can text us at 83111. Now, tonight's concert is being given by the BBC Philharmonic, playing under their chief guest conductor, Vasily Sanaisky. And they're going to perform an intriguing programme of English music from the first decades of the 20th century. Later on, commemorating the 75th anniversary of his death, we'll hear Elgar's Second Symphony. But the concert starts with two intriguing rarities: the Symphony in G minor by Ernest Moeran, and Gerald Finzi's Grand Fantasia and Toccata for piano and orchestra, with the soloist Leon Macaulay. Now, no doubt you will have heard of the sad news of the death of the British conductor Sir Edward and his wife Joan Downes recently. Ted, as he was known, had a long association with tonight's orchestra. He was their principal conductor for much of the 1980s. And so the BBC Proms and the BBC Philharmonic have decided to dedicate tonight's concert to the memory of Sir Edward and Lady Downes. During the interval, we'll be taking a look back at his career and also talking to some musicians who both knew him and worked with him. The orchestra begin tonight's programme with the Symphony in G minor by Ernest John Morin. Its first Proms performance was back in 1938, conducted by Sir Henry Wood. But like so much English symphonic music of that period, it slipped out of the repertoire after the war. The Anglo-Irish composer Morin was born in 1894, so was part of that generation whose youth was disrupted by the horrors of serving in the First World War. Although his early music is small-scale, lyrical and strongly influenced by British folk song, this large-scale four-movement symphony is a much more technically ambitious, dark and brooding work. Applause for Yuri Torchinsky, leader of the BBC Philharmonic, coming on stage. Now, I think unmistakably you'll hear the spirit of the great symphonist of the time, Sibelius, hovering over Morin's composition. Also, Morin's profound instinct for folk song. The composer himself said that the work was imagined among the mountains and seaboard of County Kerry and the sand dunes and marshes of East Norfolk. Well, joining the BBC Philharmonic on stage, their chief guest conductor, Vasily Sanaisky. The first Proms performance in over 70 years now of Ernest John Moeran's Symphony in G minor. Jonas John Morin's Symphony in G minor, performed tonight by the BBC Philharmonic leader Yuri Turchinsky under their chief guest conductor, Vasily Sanaisky. Just a reminder that every prom in this season will be broadcast on BBC Radio 3, and anything you've missed, either on radio or television, will be available on the iPlayer, which you can get on the Prom's website, bbc.co.uk/proms. And that's where you can also find all the information you could possibly want about the season, including programme notes for each and every concert. In 1941, nearly 4 years after the premiere of this work, it was performed a second time in London. Moeran is too original for easy apprehension, wrote the Times. But it is music which is likely to grow on one with each hearing. It should not be put away for another 4 years. This email just in from Graham Voisey in Brixham, Devon. He says, what an age of English music. Together with music by Finzi and Elgar, this is not only making my night, but my year so far. How wonderful to have a conductor outside the English tradition. May we have more, please. Well, as you can hear, this extremely neglected work has had a really warm reception here at the Albert Hall. You know, it's the only symphony Morin completed. He was working on a second when he died in 1950 at the age of just 55. Well, we've got a few minutes now while the stage is reset, and I'm delighted to be joined for the rest of this evening by my two guests, the composer and cellist Philip Shepherd and the writer and broadcaster Tom Service. Gentlemen, very warm welcome to you both. Philip first, did you feel that performance justified the restoration of this piece?
Yeah, I mean, why that's not common repertoire is beyond me. I mean, that piece to me sounds like sort of music for, I don't know, Brave New World. It's certainly something I think Aldous Huxley would have liked, because it doesn't sound like anybody else. So it's sort of intriguing. I want to hear it again because there's so much packed into it.
It's interesting you say it doesn't sound like anybody else's music. I mean, it is actually chock full of things like sort of Vaughan Williams chordal shifts and Irish folk tunes and so on. It's familiar territory, right, Tom?
Yeah, and there's sort of a bit of a problem with it, I think, because the sort of storm section in the finale is not just like, it's really a copy of Sibelius's last tone poem Tapiola, which he'd written in 1926. I mean, I guess the thing about this, you think about when Morin's writing this, not many people would have heard Tapiola, so they wouldn't think, oh, that's a bit like, oh, he's nicked that from Sibelius, he's some kind of lay about not writing his own music. But I think, like, I mean, listening to this piece, I've heard it on record a few times, and it's much more effective in performance. Yeah. I think, and especially a performance like that, actually, because I thought Sinaisky really did something different than Adrian Bolt or the recordings do, because he was kind of dynamising it. You know, you think he was giving a bit more energy and trying to kind of get through it. So he wasn't dwelling on too much of the English pastoral folksiness that maybe, you know, other commentators might have other conductors might want to do.
I thought he was using the hall as an instrument as well. I think where some orchestras sometimes suffer in here, as I know we've talked about, is that sometimes the detail can get lost. It seemed very punchy. It seemed like a kind of chamber performance in a good way.
I think that's absolutely right. Well, look, if there's any forgotten piece that you'd like to see restored, as it were, particularly at the proms, you know, whether it's the back catalogue by a well-known composer or it's some work by somebody that nobody's hardly heard of, do let us know. You can email us proms@bbc.co.uk or send us a text on 83111. That, of course, the noise of the Prommers. It's their tradition. They always go heave-ho when the piano comes on stage. And it, of course, is the piano that is going to be featured next. The Grand Fantasia in Toccato for piano and orchestra by Gerald Finzi. And it'll be performed tonight by one of England's finest young pianists, Leon Macaulay, who we'll be talking to, hopefully, during the interval. So text us to 83111 or email us proms@bbc.co.uk if there's anything in particular you'd like us to ask him. Now, Tom, this piece by Finzi, it took him about 30 years to compose, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, I don't think he was working on it the entire time. It's only about, 11 minutes long. I think the thing about it is he'd written most of the piano part. I mean, the extraordinary thing about this piece for a piano and large orchestra, the piano plays for about 7 minutes. and then there's this sort of second half of the orchestra, the toccata. So the Fantasia is this really strange piece. I mean, the piece that Finzi, that most people might be familiar with, is Dies Natalis, that very pastoral, radiant piece for tenor and string orchestra. And this is completely different. I mean, it's not a pastiche of a Bach French overture, but it kind of almost is. And I don't quite know how he does it, because it sounds like Baroque music, and yet it's not Baroque music, and it's not neoclassical. This isn't like Stravinsky and neoclassicism.
Well, the great hallmark of it, I suppose, is that, you know, only about sort of 10 bars into this weird kind of quasi-cadenza passage which opens the piece, you know you're in Finzi land. Even though it has all those other hallmarks, it's still it's redolent of his sound world, and his use of chords and harmony.
Well, his use of harmony is bizarre, because when I heard it in the rehearsal, I was thinking, well, this reminds me of something. It's a bit like when Jacques Lussier arranges Bach, but it's because he's adding in Finzi chords, and that makes it sound like it's jazz music. But it's a chamber cadenza at the beginning. It's not Liszt piano concerto cadenza at the front. It's something much more subtle than that.
I think it's one of those pieces. I know, I can imagine exactly why it is a bit neglected, not just because it's a slightly odd thing to program its length, you know, it's not a proper piano concerto length, but also, you know, like I say, it's kind of the wastage of the orchestra in it. It's no surprise to me that even for that practical reason it's not been neglected. It'll make our minds up now as to whether it should be restored to concert programs on a more regular basis.
Do either of you want to just quickly put Finzi into the musical map for anyone who's not come across him?
I think he's someone who's been unjustly sort of lost. I mean, I think if he had lived longer, he'd probably be known more as an orchestral composer, but he's known as primarily as a composer for voice and sort of subtle string pieces and for a few concertos. But he is actually a much greater composer, I think, than people give him.
I don't think he's been unfairly treated. You know, I think his pieces have come back a bit, and you know, maybe he's where he ought to be now.
Well, applause now for tonight's soloist Leon Macaulay and the conductor Vasily Sanaisky. Together they're going to perform the Grand Fantasia in Toccata by Gerald Finzi.